Yep.
Good Monday evening and welcome to another week of Overtime here on WOTM. I am Gerhard Mathangani, joined by our expert historian and researcher and a great show contributor, Mark Everett Kelly, back in the house. Mark, obviously it was a great weekend. How you doing?
It was pretty good. I mean, you don't know down here whether it's going to rain or be sunny.
That's
and
right.
we've experienced everything from a quagmire to basically being without the sun for a little while. But I tell you what, when it's really nice down here, like the sun really feels good.
Yeah.
And that part of it I really like. I don't like wading through water, though, when it does rain, and it seems to drown out my whole apartment.
Exactly. And honestly, in Alabama Springs is something you have to look out for. It's obviously a great time of year on the calendar as well. On the sports calendar, we have a whole lot to talk about the Atlanta Braves. Obviously a great NFL draft. That is now over. We'll give you some of our thoughts on that and some of the history made by those over in Tuscaloosa. We'll also talk a little Aaron Rodgers creating some little bit of drama with the Green Bay Packers. We'll dive into that as well. But we will start with Jacksonville State. They saw their season begin back in the fall in a very weird year. Played 4 games in the fall. Then they played a full slate of games as well as the FCS tournament and the FCS playoffs, and that season came to an end on Sunday against Delaware. Mark, that's where we'll start. JSU following in that game, 20-14. We'll dive into some of the statistics, but what were some of your thoughts about JSU, the way they were able to play, and the kind of adversity they had to go through in their season-ending game against Delaware?
Yeah, no one sees stuff like that coming.
That's right.
You expect them to play a team that's pretty much just like them. They're both real strong defensively. And if that would have played out, we would have gotten a good game.
Right.
But what happened after Zion got hurt, it became unwatchable. It really did. I felt bad for both teams. You had a point where after Zion got hurt, there were 9 drives that they made.
Right.
And they had negative 18 yards in those 9 drives. And no drive lasted for more than 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Right.
So it was done, and then it was done quick. And it just seems like they were going back and forth between offenses. Okay, we'll go 3 and out, you go 3 and out. We'll go 3 and out, you go 3 and out. And that's kind of the way it was until opening up the second half. You figure, okay, they get a 74-yard run.
Right.
We're right back into it. The crowd's back into it. But then again, the same stuff. They just couldn't move the ball. They're committing penalties. Another game where they commit a lot of penalties.
Right.
But at that point, I think they were just totally frustrated, because they realized they couldn't move the ball consistently, and they were trying just about everything. They threw the kitchen sink at them, and just not much could be done. I don't know if they would have won against a lesser team either, because this is a really good defense.
Exactly.
So they made them look worse. It's not like they did it against a nobody defense. This was a very good, very fast, very strong defense, and whatever Jack State wanted to do, they still had good players, and they could still make plays, as you saw with the touchdown run early in the second half. But they couldn't. They could barely get past the line of scrimmage after that one run. And then outside of the last drive where they scored the touchdown maker 2014, the game wasn't that close. I mean, 2014 looks like, wow, they had a shot. They didn't. You knew at some point that Delaware wasn't going to risk anything, and they were going to have to say, look, Jack State, if you could score 2 touchdowns on us, then go ahead. But we don't think you can do that. And that's pretty much what had happened in the second half. And it became a little bit of a boring game when you consider how much this game meant. I mean, we were all excited for it.
Yeah.
People were ready for it. And that kills the momentum right away. Kind of like when Cincinnati had Carson Palmer in that 2005 playoff game against the Steelers. He gets injured right away, and then here comes John Kitna. And as some of the Steelers players said, that game was over.
Exactly.
You knew Kitna wasn't going to beat us.
Exactly.
And I think that's what happened here too. So you feel bad, like you said, they're already on their backup with Zion, and now that you can only do so much. And when you're down to your third backup, not too many teams are expected to win.
It's demoralizing. I think it's a good word that you've used. And also, they've had this problem at this position. Now, it's the same season, but they had it in the fall when at the fourth of the 4 non-conference games, They ended up losing their starting quarterback in Zerrick Cooper, which was a big blow because Cooper was set to have another big year and going to use that year to maybe springboard a run into the NFL. Obviously, that got halted, and then Zion actually came in and made history, beating FIU in one of JSU's first wins over an FBS opponent, knocking off FIU, a strong 3-1 finish, 3-1 regular season finish. So he had some high hopes, knowing that Zion Webb, number one, got a big win there, and he's now your guy that's going into the spring. But then, obviously, when you get your backup doesn't get the reps, the same reps in practice that your starter does. And so Zion goes out, and then you have to completely just change your game plan as well. And I think that's exactly what hurt JSU in that matchup. Now the Blue Hens are now 7-0, and this is, like you said, this is one of the best defensive teams in the league. Do you now think Delaware, the Blue Hens, could be a team that end up winning the national championship? They have a tough game next week, and obviously if they win that one, they go to the FCS championship. I think a lot of people might have saw this team as probably a true national contender as the number 5 seed in the tournament.
Well, I just don't think they could score enough. If they're going to have this hard time scoring to be this close to game with as bad as Jack State played on offense, and if you really want to draw a good parallel, imagine if Mac Jones then got hurt.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And now we're down to the third backup with Alabama. Still probably a 5-star prospect.
Right.
But he doesn't know the offense as well as Mac Jones did. That was like kind of the perfect fit for that. But if Mac Jones would have gotten hurt, Alabama would not have won the national championship, obviously. And so many other things could have happened to them this last year. But, I mean, no one really got near them with that offensive line. But that's kind of the parallel that I would draw to that.
Exactly.
They've already lost their starter. Now they're down to their second, their backup, which is pretty good.
Right.
And he knew the offense, and he was kind of waiting for his shot. And then after that, you kind of take your chances. But, look, when you get to the South Dakota States and North Dakota States and then Delaware, there's still a little bit of a difference between those two teams. And they're just not explosive. They're very good defensively, but being good defensively against Jack State, which can do a lot of things, those other teams can really put up numbers. I mean, they live for that. That's kind of what they waited all year for. Delaware, I don't think, is at that level. And you kind of saw it in this game. If they really were a national title contender, they would have probably blew them out.
Right.
And they left so much on the field as far as, you know, if Jack State would have been able to muster some kind of offense, they would have possibly even could have pulled an upset, but there was just too much of the unknown when you're Jack State and you're trying to make up for everything. You had no idea this was going to happen. You didn't prepare for it. And who would after the season that Zion had, after already having to replace your starting quarterback? So I think that for the season they had, they did as best as they could. But it was fun to see them with this unique season in the spring, and then also the playoff too. A 16-team format instead of the 28-team format that they normally have.
Exactly. Let's take a look at some numbers here, especially from the offensive side. And one of the things that obviously you know that will have to hurt when you lose your starting quarterback is you play well below your averages. And you did a good job here breaking down what they were averaging going into this game. And they honestly had a couple of 40-point games, but a high average and really across the board just could not muster enough offense in order to not only stay on the field on third down, but score as well.
Yeah, and also their average drive was a lot longer than a minute and a half, which is
Yeah.
what it turned into in this game. And when you can't run the ball, all that gets taken away. So if you're on offensive line and now you're having to figure out what we're going to do, and they tried to throw in some trick plays, and they tried to get creative, but there just wasn't much that they can do. They just they weren't prepared enough. And you can't blame it. It's not like it was a coaching problem. You know, Grass is a great coach. He prepares them, 99% of the time, they're 100% prepared, I would say, if that makes any sense.
Right.
But I think that in a situation like this, you can't prepare. So to say that they tried to react to what happened and got thrown right into an impossible situation, I think sometimes that happens in sports.
Exactly.
And on a very rare occasion, can you still overcome and win? But I thought they did the best they could. Grass was, and everybody there was very proud of the guys. They kept fighting. They didn't give up, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Exactly. Some other numbers that you dove into, they're held under 10 first downs for the first time in a very long time since the 2015 National Championship game when they played Carson Wentz. And that's part of the notes that you were able to muster up after this loss, so many things that they had been doing so well, they just couldn't get it done Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, that third down, too. I mean, they were, 46% on the year, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, that was right up against the leaders. And you just knew, it's like almost they could have saved time if they just punted it on second down.
Right.
Because they just weren't going anywhere. 1 for 12 on third down, 9 drives of 3 plays or fewer. But there's really not much else to say.
Exactly. Head coach John Gross met the media after the football game and talked about his level of pride with the guys and how everything broke down on Saturday's game.
I thought we had good plans coming in, and shame we just didn't get to see the plan work out offensively because you just had a guy, playing quarterback at, really ran scout team all week. Chance came in, did okay. We made a change with AC to go with the third quarter, and tonight of practice comes out and just makes a spectacular run, gets us back in it. We got to, make it a one-score game, and we're in the game. And defense will play better the second half, but still didn't get the ball. Had some stops in the red zone, forced field goals, but we had a lot of chances with the field flip to get off the field that we didn't get off the field on that would have made a difference. End of the day, you got to commend them. They made the plays, did what they had to do. Our guys, though, still proud of them. A bunch of winners in that locker room. That's what I told them when we got through in the locker room a while ago. If when you're down 2 scores and your starting quarterback gets torn ACL, you could have hung your heads and really hung it up then against a team like Delaware. And we didn't do that. We responded. We fought to the final play of the game, gave ourselves a chance to get onside kick and have the ball in our hand again with a score to make it a one-score game there at the end. So we didn't give up, and we played hard. And wish Delaware well next week. Didn't expect to be sitting here talking about a loss today.
So Delaware is in, and the other 3 teams that are into the Final Four of the FCS playoffs, South Dakota State, a 31-26 winner over Southern Illinois. Sam Houston with a nice win over North Dakota State, and also James Madison is also in. Mark, you also talked about the fact that those teams can score at a high clip. They did so in their quarterfinal round game. Delaware head coach Danny Rocco met the media also after the game yesterday. His level of pride was once again very high after his team picked up yet another road victory in the playoffs.
But I could not be more proud of our coaching staff and of our players. We've been all in from the very beginning. I had been saying from the very beginning that there is no logical path through this. When we all started back with COVID, the rules kept changing, the calendar kept changing, our schedule kept changing. There wasn't like one right way to do it. But we made decisions, we kind of changed with the adjustments, and our players have been so passionately excited about this season, and they demonstrated it again here today. So after getting off to a really fast start, with some kind of impressive scores, our last 3 games have been, tight games. And this is a good football team. This is a football team that can win games a lot of different ways, and we proved it again out here today.
So Delaware pulled off one upset at Burgess Snow Field. Can they do it again? They'll meet the number 1 team in the bracket, South Dakota State, Saturday at 11 a.m. The other semifinal matchup, Sam Houston against James Madison. That should be a great one. Number 2 versus number 3. The finals are Sunday, May 16th in Frisco, Texas. Kickoff is set for 1 p.m. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, speaking of struggles, the struggles have been real for the Atlanta Braves. We will dive into what they have to look forward to over their next few games coming up next here on Overtime.